have whale in our internal testing. So to what to get to actually understand what is happening, how is this whale actually moving, how is it well actually propelling, we understand this by some kind of simulation which we are performing using this plate. So this is just a representative figure I'm saying. So let us get into the concepts of FSI. What is it? What is actually happening? So we have a fluid, we have a solid, we have a fluid, and they are actually and they are actually separated by a boundary. You also know in thermodynamics you might have studied this surrounding and system and the boundary. So what we have, that there is a huge there is an interaction between this solid in red and the fluid in blue. So this is a multi-physics phenomenon, of course. So different kinds of fluid physics is going on. So fluid is being governed by different kind of equations, and the solid motion is being governed by different kind of equations. So when these motions combine, when we combine them, that is known as fluid structure interactions. So this is actually abundant in nature. You can find it everywhere. So if you can you can see the oscillations of a overhanging cable, the transmission lines, electricity transmission lines. So in a windy day, you can find them swinging in the air, or you can even feel the oscillations of a bridge if you go to some park and there is like amusement park and there is a bridge cantilevered bridge. So not cantilevered, simply supported bridge. So you can see them actually swinging in the air. You can feel it. So, and this is like very much relevant to many areas of engineering where, so as we can see here, that it is relevant to um, the aerospace engineering, it is relevant to our biology, it is relevant to wind turbines, water turbines, and where not. It's everywhere actually. So to understand this coupled interactions, it is very important to study this fluid structure interactions so that we can design a much better structure, much safer structure. Now, why is this concern for the safety is coming in here? It is so because in the history we have seen the destruction. So as you can see for the civil in an example of civil engineering, this is an actual bridge which collapsed in 1940. So due to these oscillations, and this was a very new bridge and it collapsed all of a sudden. So as you can see this, that how is it, as if it appears as if it is made up of rubber, but these are our steel and concrete structures. So in the first video on the top, you can see that if you travel in an aeroplane, sometimes you will hear that due to the turbulence we are having some issues. So what is happening during this turbulence? This is an extreme condition. So this is what is happening during turbulence. The wings actually oscillate, and that is called in aerospace engineering we call this phenomenon as the flutter of wings. Okay, so these are the safety concerns. We need to actually control these vibrations, otherwise these destructions might happen again and again. So this was the time when these fluid structure interactions were being considered for the design studies. So let us like move to now applications in, suppose in biomedical engineering, how the blood flows through the arteries, how this pumping gets done. So in biology, you can see that the how is the motion of this sperm. This is an sperm. How is the motion of this sperm taking place? How is this the flexible structure attached to the sperm is actually helping it propel in such a viscous fluid. So in marine life also you will find like plenty of animals, plenty of mammals, plenty of animals in the water who are actually like the in the first picture also we saw a whale which we are trying to mimic it. So it is like very flexible bodies, and with those flexible bodies we are trying to actually analyze that what is happening, what how are these mammals, these creatures actually moving within their medium. So to understand this, to tackle this kind of problems, uh, we are actually having three kinds of steps to do that. Three kinds of solutions we actually attempt to do. The first one is the experimental method. So you can perform experiments with some kind of model. That suppose you want to study the flow around an aeroplane. So you have to like model your aeroplane in the using some 3D printing technique of some very small size, and then you can test it in the wind tunnel. Or you want to study the effect of how these fishes are actually swimming, then you need to perform the experiments in the water tunnel. So this is actually very expensive, because it is expensive in the sense that because to accumulate the data which we are at the surface of these bodies, it is very expensive, and it is not that easy. So it needs very high precision sensors to actually get those data. So, and also you cannot vary a lot of parameters there. You are actually uh, limited to changing very only a few parameters at once. So, but these methods are actually essential for modeling, for validating our numerical models, which we make further. So the next one is the analytical method. What we do here is we actually make a model. The equations which we do, and we try to reduce it, simplify the equations, so that we can solve it for some simple cases and try to understand that how is this happening. But it has very limited application. The third one is the computational technique. So here it is, what we need is we will be having a set of governing equations for fluid, for the solid medium, and at the interface also. So to handle this, like it is very computationally intensive, and it is like difficult to develop also. A simple fluid flow you can handle by solving the Navier-Stokes equations, or a simple oscillation of the structure, as we have seen in structural mechanics, in solid mechanics, the deflection of beams. So there you are actually solving only the solid equation. But and when you are solving the fluid motion, you are solving only the fluid equation. But for fluid structure interactions, you will have to handle these two equations together. And because both are actually impacting each other. So there are like different methods for a different problem. So if someone says you that there is one method which can handle all kind of problems in FSI, then he is actually bluffing you. So do not fall in this kind of trap. So the main issue with this is that how do we couple this fluid and solid solvers? This is the main challenge, because as soon as we add complexity to the problem, uh, your solvers starts crashing. It cannot solve it due to ill conditioning of the matrices. So here are some of the governing questions which we are using. So a rigid solid is like, for a rigid solid we are actually using um, ma double dot plus cx dot plus, it's like the acceleration, the spring mass damper, the damper equation which we are having, mx double dot plus cx dot plus kx equal to 0. So here, since they are coupled, so this forcing is actually coming from the fluid, forcing from the fluid on the solid. So this is the rigid body equation which we are solving, and the Navier-Stokes equations for the incompressible for the fluid flow. But at this interface, we need to be very cautious here, that uh, it must actually satisfy those kinematic and dynamic constraints. So at the kinematic constraint, we are saying that the velocities of the points on this interface will have no slip velocity. It's like velocity of the fluid and the velocity of the solid must be equal. And second one, at the net force acting on this will be 0. So we need to solve the set of equations in 1, the set of equations in 2 and 3. So and together. So this is actually very complex problem. Solving Navier-Stokes equations is itself very complex, and when we are adding these complexities to it, it gets more complex. That's why we see that a lot of studies in past has been like performed in laminar flow, or where the Reynolds number is very less, because as soon as like we introduce three dimensionality to the flow, it gets even worse. So now we will look at the numerical aspects. So this solid portion is being solved by the solid solver. The fluid solver solves this fluid portion, the Navier-Stokes equations, and this is the coupling. So if I ask you that can we solve the problem with the best available solvers which we have for the fluid or for the solid, then I must say that it is no. You cannot solve it. You cannot solve any problem if you don't know about the coupling. So this is the reason why, because the problem is at the interface. This coupling is the main culprit. So as soon as you vary the complexities, you vary the properties of the solid, everything at the interface will now change. So yeah, this is an alert that if someone asserts that their method or tool can handle a fluid structure interactions issue without investigating the problem, like it's highly probable that they are being dishonest. They are actually telling you a lie. So we need to actually understand that how important, what are the important properties of the numerical schemes for fluid structure interactions. What we should be considering while developing a solver, while solving these complex FSI issues. So first we need to find out that whether the tool whichever what you are using is having this FSI capability or not, whether it can handle that kind of coupling, coupled equations or not. So, and it should be robust also. So the first thing you need to see that whether it is FSI, whether it is having FSI capability. Second thing is important. That is important is the robustness. So for a reasonable time step, whether the system is performing all its simulations without crashing. So this is very important point, because it is not always feasible to have a very smaller time step. Suppose I want to simulate a oscillating cylinder in the fluid flow, and I am taking the time step to be like 0.0001, suppose. So for 1 second of the simulation, you are actually paying a very high computational cost, which is not justified. Third thing which is very important is the accuracy. How accurate is the solution? Fourth is the stability. The fifth is that the solvers actually it should be capable of conserving this mass, momentum, and energy equations, and especially at the interface, this has to be conserved. And interface in the sense that where the fluid and the structure are actually coupling. So there. How efficient is this numerical scheme? It is very important that how much time it can be measured in the terms of time required for the computations. So boundary conditions, handling these boundary conditions is essential, especially at the interface. So flexibility is also important. That suppose a solver which we have developed, which we are using in say ANSYS or any other commercial software. So is it flexible enough to handle different types of interactions, different kinds of problems? And the last one, which is important, is the convergence. So as the grid is refined, the solutions should actually reach the exact solution. That is the meaning of the convergence. Okay, So now we're interested in the aspects that can limit the FSI solver capability. What are those? So as we can see in the pictures on the left, on the right actually, is that that both these solids are actually flexible. So this is very thin and highly flexible. This is a little bit thicker solid, but it is a flexible solid. So that what is important is that is the solid rigid or flexible. So if it is rigid, it is easier to solve. But if we add flexibility to it, so it is very difficult to handle that kind of problem. So thickness is also very important. If it is thick, then it will have a deformation in the shown in this kind of picture, the A figure, the top one. And if it is like very thin, so you can have a deformation of like this. So in many cases it will happen that all that majority of the softwares which you are using, it may crash. So so you need to modify your solvers accordingly to handle this kind of simulations, handle this kind of cases. So how much is the deformation is important, and the ratio of the densities of the solid and the fluid, we call this as the density ratio or the mass ratio. So if you are having a mass ratio closer to 1, or means like closer to 1 in the sense that the density of the fluid and the density of the solid, they become equal or very close to that, then it is very high, it is highly possible that the that your simulations may crash. But but if you're using a solid with a higher density, suppose mass ratio 10, it's like mass ratio 10 in the sense that the solid is 10 times heavier than the fluid, the density of the solid is 10 times higher than that of the fluid. In that case, you may be able to run the simulations effectively. So, and the topological changes are also very important, that how this solid is topological changes are also very important, that how this structure of the solid is changing and how is it like interacting with other solid. So the main challenges which we actually now face in the FSI problems is actually the deformation, the large scale deformation, and and the change in the topology of the body, of the geometry. And this is the image where we are showing that how this mm, this mass ratio or the density ratio of the solid to the fluid is 10. It has successfully run, but while this density ratio of 1, it has crashed. So this is called the added mass instability. So the higher the flexibility, the more is the flexibility, the more is the added mass to it. So and so when this happens, and when the fluid is lighter, there is an added mass to it. So that's why, so and not many solvers can handle this added mass instability. So we have to be very particular on what mass ratio we are using, and what are the and whether this solver will be able to solve this kind of problems or not. And when we are dealing with large scale problems, another challenge actually. So there are a lot of challenges in FSI solvers. It is like it is a developing field. So many people are actually working on it and trying to develop many solvers for both commercial and for both our laboratory needs, so that we can easily try to study the very complex interactions between the fluid and structures. And the motto, that the motto is to develop a very safer environment, very safer future. So as you can see here on these pictures in A and B, that we are having some kind of grid kind of a structure here. So this is essential. This is called mesh. So this is essential when you are solving actually the FSI problems, any numerical problem. You need to have some mesh around it. So there are two types of meshes which we usually come along when we are handling this kind of issue problems. The first is the body fitted meshes. So as the name signifies that it is body fitted. It's like the mesh is actually fitting around the body. It is very dense close to the body, and it gets coarser outside. Since we are interested in actually knowing what are the forces acting on this body, so to know them accurately, we need to have a lot of points on this body. That's why it becomes very dense here. And if we are actually if we are actually having a lot of points on the body, it can actually give you it can actually give you a better solution, a more stable solution, accurate solution. So but this is a for a stationary solid. We are saying it. What will happen when the solid will start moving? So when the solid will, suppose you can imagine this, when the body starts moving, so what will happen if the circular cylinder which we are showing here, if it actually moves upwards, so the mesh which is in the upper which is above the circular cylinder, it will actually contract, and the mesh which is below this, it will actually elongate. So it is like this, the surrounding fluid mesh which is there, it is also actually moving. So now, since that is also moving, so for small displacements it is okay. But if it starts oscillating large if it starts making large displacements, large oscillations, then what will happen, that uh, that it will compact it so much that the mesh will have approximately zero volume, which will actually make the, while we are solving these equations in matrix form, the governing equations, so it will make the the stiffness matrix very bad, and then it will be very difficult to solve that kind of problems, and you may get a no solution there, or you may get some error. So so this is what is happening when suppose this is an example where solid is trying to rotate. So as you can see an element here. So if you are having a rotationary motion kind of here, then what we are saying, that with a small rotation it is fine, it can handle this. But when you even start rotating it more, so it is actually entering into the solid element which is of our interest. So this is actually the reason why it crashes, why our simulations crash. So this is but there are certain advantages also, that it is like very efficient and is well established. It has been it has been being used from now more than 50-60 years, 50 years I can say. And it is like available in most of the commercial softwares you can handle. So for simple problems, you can handle, you can, for simple problems with rigid body and with bodies which are having small displacements, you can actually study this with this kind of mesh. And this, it is having some disadvantages also. It is very difficult to actually, when we are having when we add complexities in the terms by adding number of actually bodies here. So this is like 4 bodies you can see, and all of them are allowed to freely fall. Suppose this is a bubble, or you can say a pearl. 4 pearls are there, and they are allowed to fall freely in it. So this mesh is actually very difficult to generate, and it requires a very sophisticated remeshing scheme, because after it moves to this location, suppose this is the new location of the mesh, so it has all the entire fluid mesh, you can see everything has changed. But this is that every time you need to remesh your meshes, so that you can handle the solutions effectively. So, and it's like very complicated, and when you move to three-dimensional, when
अर्जेंट 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 यार, बस जान दो यार।
Hello, Dr. BP Srivastava. Please mute. Dr. BP Srivastava and Dr. Manoj Darwai.
अच्छी कॉन्फ्रेंस है
Please,
सर, अटेंड करना बढ़िया।
I request, please mute yourself. Okay, sorry for the disturbance. Anyways, so all these measures which we are seeing, it is actually in two dimensions. So when we add the third dimension, it becomes very complicated. It becomes very heavy mesh in the sense that you will have like crores of elements, crores of nodes in it, and at all those nodes you need to solve those your governing equations, and then it becomes very tedious, very time consuming. So these are some of the disadvantages and advantages we have discussed. So to handle this kind of disadvantages, people researchers have come with another method, which we are aware of, like by the name immerse boundary method. So what we actually do is here is like we are actually not we are meshing the fluid domain once, and we are not and which is not being changed, which is not being changed by the motion, or even though the motion of the solid is happening, it is not being changed. Now the point is that if it is not changing, how are we actually handling the at the interface? Yes, so this is the complex thing. So this is actually saving our computational time in a sense, but there are a few disadvantages also, so we'll discuss on it. So this coupling which is happening at the solid body interface, so there are various types of coupling available. So one is the force, that every time it moves up and down every time. Sometimes you can see that the fluid element is actually inside, which should be on the body, but that is actually the fluid node is actually sometimes inside and sometimes outside. So we need to force it on the body. So you need to write some other algorithm, so that it can you can actually every time force these fluid nodes on the nodes of the solid, and then you can handle those kind of issues. So there are certain disadvantages also, that near this body you cannot generate a very coarse, very lighter mesh. uh, the kind of mesh we have seen in the previous slide, that near the body it is very coarse mesh, sorry, very dense mesh, very fine mesh near the body for accurate solutions. So here if you want to generate a very dense mesh, then it gets very difficult. So not difficult actually, you will be increasing the number of node points, and that's all. And but it is actually lacking the boundary mesh, that is here, and this is known as the boundary layer mesh. I forgot to tell you, this is known as the boundary layer mesh. So in because we are actually interested in understanding what is happening near its boundary, because that is the most crucial uh, position where this interference, where this coupling is taking place. So but yeah, this can handle very complex problems. So where if you have like a lot of flexibility in the body, you can handle this with this kind of method easily. But it has got certain limitations, that it is till now it has been developed only for applicable only for the low Reynolds number flows. So by low Reynolds number I mean low to moderate. By low to moderate Reynolds number I mean to say that preferably the flow has not become turbulent. So it is below turbulent, we can study using this kind of method. Okay, so here I discuss that how is the difficulty level actually developing. So we have a rigid structure, and if we are moved to the flexible structure, we are increasing the difficulty of the problem. So in rigid also, if you have a small displacement or small rotation, it is okay. But when the large displacements are there, your solver must be efficient enough to handle this large displacement or large rotation. For flexible structures, we have seen that if it is heavy one, a bulky structure, then it is easier to solve as compared to the lightweight bodies. Lightweight, you can consider the your knowledge of the mass ratio or the density ratio, which we discussed previously. So now if you comes next, so if you are performing your simulations in air and then in water, then the difficulty level actually increases. And when we are actually moving from a laminar to turbulent flow, then the difficulty is again increasing. So if you are solving a turbulent flow in water with flexible structure that is thin and lightweight, you need to have a very efficient fluid structure induction solver. So not all commercial solvers are actually having this flexibility, but not almost like not every. So I think there is no solver which can handle everything so effectively. There are certain limitations to everything, to every available softwares which we have. So now we'll see that what are the softwares which we are available with. So we have like several open source softwares like OpenFOAM, SimVascular, YELS2. Precise is for the coupling of these two solid and fluid solvers, and they have like different applications. They have it. So for if you are interested in biomechanics, then in using finite element, then it is FE Bio. So these are the open source softwares. So you can use them. You can use them for your research if you're interested in. But you need to have some knowledge of coding so that you can handle you can handle those software effectively. There are certain commercial softwares also available. You might be aware of ANSYS, COMSOL, and Abacus. So many structural guys they keep on using they keep using this Abacus. I'm not aware of all those things. Abacus has like recently added our the fluid solvers and the coupling solvers also, so to handle these FSI problems. So the point is that coupling is the main concern. And the third thing which you can do is you can write your own code if you're good at programming. I'm not good at programming, so I use my open form solvers, the open source softwares which are available. And so these are the important things which you might know, you might consider that to develop your knowledge to handle these FSI problems. You must have this knowledge of the fluid mechanics and the elementary knowledge of your CFD solids. For solids, you need to know about this, since you are dealing with the oscillations of the body, the structural body and the flexibility of the body. You need to know how much the solid can deflect, what equations are needed for solving that kind of motions. And for sometimes we can get the data, and to analyze those data we need to write some programs. So you can be actually comfortable in whatever code language you're comfortable, may it be C++ or Fortran, or people are using now Julia also, or the Python or MATLAB. Anything you're comfortable with, you can handle the data effectively to get the results of your desired problem. So I'll show a few simulations which we have performed here. So I hope this links will work. Yes. So, so here we are actually seeing that how this will be a longer video. I'll show you with this, the tandem oscillating electrical cylinders. How does it do? So is this a small screen visible to you, Dr. Jha? Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes,
Okay.
sir, visible.
Okay. So you can see here that how these tandem, these bodies are they are free to oscillate, and they are not only oscillating, they're also rotating. So they're also rotating and oscillating together. Um, so how complex is this fluid structures in the wake of the body? So we are interested in analyzing these things also. So this is not an easy simulation to do, but yeah, suppose we are having this now thin plates, flexible thin plates. So these plates, it can So when we have a flexibility, it can be used for energy harvesting, which is a very hot topic these days. You can see India is actually looking for, not only India, the entire world is actually looking for the alternate ways to harness energy. So this can be one of the ways to harness energy. So these flexible structures can be used because more is the flexibility, more is the deformation, and since more deformation is there, so if you have a piezoelectric material here, it can actually be used to develop more force, more electromotive force, and hence the more electricity it can be generated. But this is as far as this kind of energy harvesters has been tested so far. So it is generating very small power, very small amount of power, but it is enough power, it generates enough power to actually energy energize your various sensors which we are actually using nowadays everywhere. So if you can see now the flexible thin leaf. So how flexible this is and the kind of deformation it is making. So it is a very tough simulation to do. You can see how the velocity vectors are actually now turning here, and again it will go back to this position. So these are some of the simulations. Also, very interesting simulations these days uh, are this. So as you can see, we have like two square cylinders 10 by tandem. So you can consider them as a fish with a tail. So two fishes are actually moving, uh, are actually waving their tail, and you can see at the displacements of these two tails. So what you are seeing is that the after a certain time, the effect of this tail on this tail is that is such that its displacement has decreased. So this is a very interesting simulation which we have performed. So this has decreased so much. So we are actually interested in that how these side by side bodies is actually so two, if you can consider side by side fishes. So two side by side fishes are actually affecting each other's motion, each other's position, displacements of their tails. So yeah, so this is the last one I'd like to show here. This is a small, huge video actually, that how this is a rectangular cylinder with with an aspect ratio of 6:1. So rectangular cylinder aspect ratio, you can see the longitudinal upon the lateral dimension. We are saying the aspect ratio. As you can see here, still now till now it has not started rotating. So and you are having a vortex shading at some frequency. But if you move further, suppose this like this, so you can see vortices being shed from uh, vortices which are being shed from here. It is actually uh, combining here itself on the surface also. So and that kind of and that is called a laminar separation bubble. So and that has got like different effects on different bodies. Suppose that separation bubble can be, and it is a very hot area these days for the research. And this is also important to study here, to understand here, that as these oscillations are going on, we are actually the frequency of the vortex shedding has changed, and the frequency of the vortex shedding has changed. So previously we were having faster frequency of shedding of the vortices, but now we are having a a relatively lower oscillation frequency, shedding frequency. So yes, so these are some of the interesting simulations which we have performed, and I have like compiled here for this presentation. So yeah, thank you so much for your kind attention. And my name is Kumar Saurav, as Dr. Jha has already mentioned. So if you want to connect to me, you can actually write to me on this following email addresses, and I'm open to collaborate also if some of you are interested in working in field research interactions and have some idea. So you can come up and we can actually talk over this and we can handle those problems too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Dr. Saurav.
Welcome.
Now, anybody has any question, can proceed. Mr. Prityush Anand, your mic is sounding loud. Can you rectify that part? Anybody has question, he can ask. No question? Cannot able to hear Prityush Anand. Voice is very low. Your voice is very low. We cannot able to hear you.
You hear me now, sir?
Ah,
I don't know, something has happened with the. So, sir, like my question is not that relevant to what you taught us. Like, very thank you. That it was a very new field for me. Today, I saw
Okay.
like fluid interaction with solids, because I come from a different background. But, sir,
Okay.
basically, I'm a scientific software developer. So I have a good idea of coding and all. So as you said, sir, solving this kind of problem is difficult, like you showed in 4 5 slide back. So I'm just curious to know that what is that difficult part to solve? Is the algorithm not developed yet, or writing code is difficult? Like it's
No, it's
a
like
bit
not, yeah, it's like that not the writing code is a difficult part. So the
okay.
problem is, and the problem is that at every moment, what we are
Yeah.
seeing that every moment the position of the body is changing,
Okay.
right? And since it is a complex interaction, sometimes it rotates also, and it displaces also. At every time,
Yeah.
suppose if you are using a morphing kind of mesh, the body fitted mesh, what we have seen that it has to move with the body, and it actually distorts the mesh volume. So mesh volume actually, when it becomes zero, so it actually when we are solving those governing equations, we make it, we solve it in the formation of a matrix, right? Ax equal to b.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this A matrix, that the stiffness matrix, it gets actually ill conditioned when we are when we are actually having this zero mesh volume things. That is why
Mm-hmm.
we see that upon performing simulations with high flexibility, or when we add those kind of issues, then we see that we are getting a nan solution. We get a nan mostly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So most of these situations happen when we are solving with high flexibility bodies. So
Mhm.
with bodies with a higher displacements. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, people are working on it to handle this kind of suppose. To handle these high displacements, high flexibility, we came up with immerse boundary methods. So, but but even immerse boundary method cannot handle that boundary layer theory. That the boundary layer near the solid structure, we don't have any boundary
Mhm.
close to that. So that is a disadvantage. So to handle that, people are working on it, and recently I have seen people to have developed a cut FEM method. So where they are using it around the solid body, they are using a different kind of finite element technique to cutting those elements and finally developing a boundary layer around the solid. And that is, I have found it a very interesting one. I have not used it, so I did not include it in the slide. But yeah, people are working on it, and it is a very effectively, very fastly developing area. So if you're
Mhm.
very good at coding, I think you can try to come into this, and I think you will be able to contribute significantly to this, because as soon as from 2 dimensions you move to 3 dimensions, that is the actual
Mhm.
problems which we are working.
Yeah.
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 So in 3 dimensions, you know that the matrices are, suppose you have 100 slices to solve, suppose, in the z direction. So 100 times your equations are increasing actually.
Mhm.
suppose at present you are solving 2 lakh equations, means 2 lakh nodes. So 2 lakh times 100. So 2 lakhs times 100 equations you need to be solving. So it becomes very computationally intensive, and so that's why it gets very very difficult. So these are the only challenges which we are facing, because not every university is having having the access
Like
to high performance computing.
HPC.
Yeah. So I don't know whether NIT Jamshedpur has it or not, but I have seen not many are having. Recently, I have seen it is being established in some of the IITs like IIT Patna. It is being established there. So yeah, so these are some of the problems which we are facing, which were, because all solvers which you develop, not every solver can handle everything. So you have to be very
Yeah, that's
very yeah, you have to be very specific to the problem, that what kind of problem you are solving, and you have to develop a particular solver for that kind of problem. Suppose to add the complexity, we want to add the heat transfer to it. So you will be adding one more set of equations, conjugate heat transfer,
and
and
that
that will add
becomes
another complexity to this. Yeah. So these are
yeah,
the
yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah.
I hope I might be
Okay.
clear to you.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Okay, sir. Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
I might write to you. Okay.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Thank you.
Anybody from the participant have any questions to ask from Dr. Saurav?
Hello, sir. I just have a small question.
Yeah. Sure. Sir.
Uh, Sir, you have discussed the dynamic problem of the solid moving continuously with time.
Correct.
Suppose if we have a steady solution, then is there a easier way to solve these equations without using because in solid mechanics, whenever we are doing quasi-static simulation, we do not consider the effects of mass, because we only
Correct.
solve F is equal to kx. We do
Yes.
not take mx double dot to get the solution. But if we
Correct.
are doing explicit dynamic analysis, we also consider the inertia. So here, suppose I know that a particular problem has a steady solution, then is there a easier way without going through all this computational cost?
You are interested in solving the oscillations of the body, right? The body is oscillating or
There
not?
may not be an oscillation. Finally, it is possible that the oscillation may die down, and there may
Okay.
be
Okay.
a
Okay.
constant deformation in the body. In such a case, can I get the final solution without going through the entire time step iteration process?
No, I will say no, because since you are saying that it is deforming, so no.
So I am interested only in the final deformation. Just like when I say that if I apply a particular stress, I have a particular strain. So similarly, if
So,
I am interested in the final,
you can actually then opt for this analytical methods. So where you have your set of equations and you reduce it. It's like I'm trying to say that you can use the reduced order models, and you are trying to um, it is in some kind of fluid also, right? So fluid and the solid.
yes. That is why
Yes.
I'm asking this question. Yes.
So you can actually try using having developing those reduced order models, where what we'll do that we will combine these two equations, and the effect of the fluid on the solid will be combined in its the stiffness terms and in its damping terms. So, and you can have one equation, and that equation can be solved using MATLAB, and so you will not need to go through so many time steps in iterations. But yeah, that solution has to be very accurate, because uh, the reliability on those FSI, those reduced order models are actually not that much. So you need to verify that with the experimental results, with your simulation results also. But yes, analytical techniques are actually there, which I have not used, but which I have seen researchers do.